Hey everyone, welcome back to another perspective and chat here with us. We are reviewing another article that we stumble across, going deeper and deeper into this whole Renee Good situation. They're saying documents came out according to the CNN article about Renee Good having ties to ICE monitoring efforts in Minneapolis. And I find this interesting because I know in the video with her and her spouse, they were saying the spouse was saying they were new to the area. It says here that Renee, who was the woman that was unalived by the ICE agents, that she served on the school board of her son's school, which linked to documents encouraging parents to monitor ICE and directing them to training. They mention about the unaliving that happened with the agent here. And they also mentioned in this article that some legal experts have reviewed the documents. And they're saying the documents describe largely, so it doesn't say totally, it just says largely describe nonviolent civil disobedient tactics practiced at American protests for generations. And that is far from extremism or domestic terrorism. Can't say certain words on here, so that could be one of them. So let's just say domestic terrorism or crashing out. And they say there's nothing in those documents that suggests going at ICE agents or engaging in any form of harm or property damage. They're also liking this to say that this is authoritarianism 101, where you blame the dissenters and the activists for causing their own demise. So let's just take a look at some of this other information linked in the article. And this is interesting because I didn't know schools did things like that they watch law enforcement. I thought schools kind of had their own like school safety officers to protect the schools. I didn't know they had some schools have a whole activist thing going on now. It wasn't like that when I was 6-year-old in school. I don't remember. I know they had PTA meetings, but it wasn't about law enforcement activities. So this is a whatever. So it says one of the documents appears to be a message to parents, and this was dated December 16th, so fairly recent. And it says, "Thank you to all the families who have been on ICE watch, helping protect their neighbors." It says that the document links to another document which guides people on getting whistles to alert neighbors to ICE raids, and contact information for a school parent offering non-cooperation training. Non-cooperation training. So what does that mean? Non-cooperation training. So if your approach, no matter what you're told, you won't cooperate, and you're trained to go against your own best interest, which would be cooperating, that non-cooperating training.
That's an odd sounding training because you train to be disobedient to the law. Well, you have no control over the law's reaction. You can't just decide how much you're gonna disobey, and they'll just be like, okay, I'll let it go.
Are they reverting resisting to non-cooperation?
Right?
Is it no? They say, it's quoted in this article, quote, "ICE are untrained bullies looking for easy targets." And now neighbors showing up have saved lives, the training document reads. Well, end quote. I don't think ICE are untrained bullies looking for easy targets. I do think ICE mission, for what I've seen on TV and read, their job is immigration enforcement. So they're not looking for easy targets. They're looking for legitimate targets. People that are unlawfully in the country. So, I don't understand how. And then they say they're not trained. Some of the videos that I've been seeing, and I don't work for ICE, I don't know anyone that works for ICE, But a lot of these officers that I've seen in some of these videos, they're exercising so much restraint with the crowds that are coming at them. I mean, they have, I've seen them have things thrown at them, people literally up in their face. I'm talking about up in their face, nose to nose, pointing things at them, following after the vehicles as they're trying to leave. And a lot of these officers have exercised restraint, because who in their right mind, even a person that's not an officer, is going to accept someone coming into their face, yelling, screaming, pointing things in their face, throwing things at them, and just walk away? Now, I'm sure there's good and bad apples in every bunch, but I do think from what I've seen, now I'm sure if you have other things that you're seeing them doing and they're just bullying everyone, let us know. But some of the video clips that I've seen, and I'm not in at these protests, I would never attend these protests, because I'm not going to participate in non-cooperation training. I'm just not going to do it. That's me. But for those that are doing that, right on to you. It says another guide linked to a training document that stresses nonviolent responses to ICE while also encouraging a refusal to, quote, comply with demands, requests, and orders, end quote. It suggests, quote unquote, creative tactics, quote, knowing that crowds, props, traffic, and noise can make detentions difficult. Some ICE vehicles can't move. Whoops. It does not specifically suggest blocking operations with a vehicle. So this sounds like there's a lot of code language going on in this this training document that they're referring to. Refusal to comply with demands, requests, and orders is exactly why the incident occurred, because she was given orders multiple times to get out of the vehicle. So was this part of the document that she trained well in, which was to not comply? Because she did not comply with those orders, and rather she complied with her spouse, who told her to drive, baby, drive. And then saying that ICE vehicles can't move, whoops, but it doesn't say specifically blocking them. I mean, and then it says noise, props, and traffic can make ICE detentions difficult. This does sound like impeding ICE from doing their job. It just sounds like they've come up with these ways that they're calling creative tactics, but that all the tactics that I'm reading, at least here, are saying like, hey, let's do some things to make this more difficult for you. So now, as an individual, if you are already doing something that's obviously highly stressful, right? Nobody wants to get detained. Nobody wants to, for those who don't want to leave, they don't want to be deported. And now you have all these people that are trained in this non-cooperation training, rallying around and going at the officers. So now the situation is making detentions or investigations more difficult and more intense and just more dangerous. Things might get out of hand even faster and escalate. Don't you think?
Yeah, obviously. And it's just this organization stresses nonviolent responses, but then as you brought up, the wife told Renee to drive, baby, drive, when the officer is right there. She had to know the officer was right there, so she wasn't even following along with the guide that she was given.
Well, they also say that it says a meeting that Good attended as one of 3 parents on the board of the Southside Family Charter School. So she was actually on the board. So she would know what's going on because she's serving on the board. So that's a pretty close relationship with the school. I did see the videos with all the whistle blowing and them surrounding the ICE officers. I mean, and that's why I say the videos that I've seen, they exercise a ton of restraint, because you're basically, and they're saying, well, we have whistles and they have pow-pows. Okay, but that's what you want us to believe. But in reality, we don't know what you all have. We don't know who has a whistle, who has a weapon, who has, they don't know what you have. So just by you, like any species, even in the wild, if you surround them, they're gonna you put their back against the wall, they're gonna have to strike back to get their back off the wall. So now you have tens, hundreds of people surrounding you, almost in a circle, blowing whistles, blowing horns, banging, tapping, blocking you, running up close on you. Why would we want to escalate a situation that's already bad to worse? And this is called what? Creative tactics. This is the thing that they're doing in schools now. Like, wow. I've never heard of such a thing. But I guess schools have changed with what they're bringing into the school space. It says records don't indicate that the board voted on the message, and it's unclear whether it was more widely shared with families at Southside, a small charter school with a long history. Oh, so this school has a long history of progressive activism. And no one from the school or the board responded that served with good. Okay. Well, it says two sources familiar with the school said the school report message appeared similar to past newsletters shared with parents, but neither was on the email list at the time. Well, of course, it's not going to be claimed, because who wants that to be getting out that's going on? You know what I'm saying? That's something that's kind of like an unspoken, open secret, like people know what's happening, but they're not going to like put it on the news, The article goes on to say that Good was partially blocking a street with her vehicle. Well, we saw the video, so we know the officer told her to get out of the vehicle a few times, and we know she did not comply. So again, maybe that was part of the non-cooperation or whatever, and refusal to comply. And the only person that she did comply with, unfortunately, was the orders of the spouse. So they're saying that these things are providing evidence that she was engaged in, as you see, domestic crashing out, we'll just call it that, and that she had been stalking agents all day long. I mean, so what are they saying? She dropped off the child to the school, and then she got into the activities from the non-cooperation training. They were going to do that until what, about 3:00 when school let out? I don't know. I just think they're saying that this, the FBI is investigating and so on and so forth. So I've never heard of non-cooperation training. I mean, it's literally the oxymoron of everything I've ever been taught. I just, like, when did that become a thing? I know some people, they do those, they're free people, sovereigns, and all that stuff. And so when the cops stop them, they tell them they don't need a license plate. Okay, I've heard of that, but I've never heard of non-cooperation practice. I just thought everybody's taught, especially when you get behind a vehicle, because driver's ed, right? And they're teaching you when the cops put on their flashing lights, or if the cops pull you over, like when did it switch? I don't know when that switched, that you can not comply with orders. But apparently that's part of this whole document, or training document. And I did see a video the other day where a cop or an agent walked up to a guy, and he was blowing the horn while ICE was out doing whatever they're doing, their enforcement activities. And he just had his hand pressed on the horn. Just pressed on the horn, pressed on the horn, pressed on the horn. And the cop went right to his window, and the guy didn't even turn his head and acknowledge that the cop was there. He just kept his hand on the horn. And the agent was like, listen, you have to stop, move on. He was stopped in his vehicle in the street, and he just held his hand down on that horn. And when I tell you he didn't budge, he didn't blink an eye, it was almost like somebody implanted him in the car. Like maybe he was a mannequin with a hand glued to the steering wheel to press it down. So maybe he might have been trained in this non-cooperation activities, because he didn't listen to a thing that the agent said. And I said, wow, I mean, let us know, like, this non-cooperation training, this refusal to comply with demands, requests, and orders, like, what's the end game with that? Because I can only imagine that refusal to comply with orders, requests, and demands is only going to lead to more escalations.
Right, it's so weird, because don't we teach people to obey? officers and law enforcement, even if what they're doing is wrong and it's not justified, you should still listen in order to make sure you keep your skin safe. Now we're telling people to do the opposite, and we're just expected to be like, okay, they can't do anything to us, especially with ICE.
And then what is up with this, causing this traffic, impeding traffic? Like, if I'm a person and I don't work for ICE or anybody else, and I just want to get up and down the street, but because you all know ICE is in the area, you're gonna come and block traffic and make tons of noise because people are doing what they signed on to do. How is that being like a good citizen to your fellow neighbors that they don't even want to engage in this stuff? If ICE is icing next door or down the street, they don't want to know about it because you've pulled up with you and your 20 or 30 friends in your vehicles and start blowing the horns and blowing whistles and banging and like, why? Like, you have your agenda clearly, but is there not a more sensible way to express your viewpoints? Because at the end of the day, ICE is not going to not do their jobs. Border Patrol, the police, whatever their jobs are, they're going to do it. So maybe there's a legislation things and things like that would need to change. But like, just because you don't like the job that's being done doesn't mean you get to disrupt the entire community. Especially when it comes down to, and then think about it, you're not complying, you're refusing to do this, and then when cops use force and things get flying, anybody could get hurt. So, it just seems like it's an escalating situation. But let's take a look at a couple of videos here and see what people are saying.
Minnesota Ice Watch through this school.
I'm positive by now you've all heard of this woman and you know who she is, and you can see how they're trying to glorify what she's done. I think it's terrible. I think it's irresponsible what they're doing here, and let me go into a little bit more detail about how the left is radicalizing people like her and her children.
So is that what that is, radicalizing with these manuals they're following? Is this a brainwashing that's happening? And he says her and the children. And that's what I asked about in the previous discussion we had. Like, what are they teaching the children to follow the parents, what the parents want, or are the children being taught to respect and obey, authority figures? Like, quite interesting here, especially now that we know the schools are involved.
First, I want to mention that she was a part of a group called MN Ice Watch, Minnesota Ice Watch, where she was trained to deal with ICE and do things to impede them from doing their job, basically. They trained her to do what she was doing that day. But here's a quote. Somebody saying it was through her involvement in the school community that Good became involved in Ice Watch, a loose coalition of activists dedicated to disrupting ICE raids in the same...
So, they're being trained. Okay. Wow. I mean, you learn something new every day. So I guess, I never knew, like in other protests, I know they say they have, sometimes there's paid protesters and provocateurs in the crowd, but I never knew that actual trainings were going on to tell people what to do against certain agencies. So that's quite interesting.
City. What school are we talking about? Oh, we're talking about the school that she had dropped her child off at earlier that day. This is the school we're talking about, the Southside Family Charter School, who happens to get almost $250,000 a year and 10% of their budget from the federal government. Let's talk about the Southside Family Charter School that woman sent her child to and became radicalized for being involved with the school. What are they doing there? The Southside...
Like, we have to do some more research because the wife said they were new to the area. So, like, how... Like, is this an underground, almost like an underground, I won't say railroad, but like an underground, I mean, like this like a secret society or something that's happening? Is it because of all the, I mean, with the change of the new president, from the previous president? Like, if you're new to the area, how did you so quickly get engaged with all this stuff? It just seems like something that you maybe knew somebody that knew somebody and told you about it, because it's not advertised. This is not going to be like on television. They're advertising, join us at the South Side, and help us in our non-cooperation tactic training.
Family charter school, blah blah blah, that meets the needs of a culturally and ethnically diverse population by engaging children in critical thinking, problem solving, activism, encouraging creative expression, offering a wide range of electives. What the fuck are we teaching? What is this? Academic empowerment, social justice education? We're paying for this? What does that mean? What kind of teachers are working at this school teaching this shit? Teacher-empowered schooling, inclusive community, family and community engagement. Are you kidding me? We're sitting here training kids to go ahead and go die the same way that fucking lady just did, and otherwise cause chaos and problems in our country. We are paying to educate these kids to be fucking rebels.
But these kids at the school, some of them as young as 6. Aren't they much too young to even put that into context? What social justice activism mean? Because they don't have the capabilities mentally to understand the depth of those concepts. So why would they be teaching this at such a young age? I could see if these were, college students. Even then, their brain is not fully developed, until your early 20s. So why would this be going on at a school that has 6-year-olds?
I mean, even then, if you're gonna do it for a school for kids, like you said, for college kids, people who can fend for themselves in case things go left. Why are you teaching this to people who really need their parents for anything?
And then what is the point of this? Because they're told to just, if they don't like something, be social justice warriors. Like, so when they don't like a policy at the school, they're not gonna go? I mean, this is just a lot.
Yeah, this is a problem, because I'm sure you've all seen these teachers that probably shouldn't even be teachers, and they're the ones running the fucking school now? Students' voices are elevated, their agency and identities honored. I think you guys should call this place and email this place and
don't call them, don't email them. But let's move on. Let's check out the next video. Okay, he says on this video he has all the facts about Renee Good and ICE.
Breakdown of all the information that we know about Renee Nicole Good in the ICE shooting in Minneapolis. Renee Nicole Good was not the legal observer that many individuals initially called her. She was actively impeding ICE's efforts in the Minneapolis area. She was seen dancing in her vehicle as her vehicle intentionally and deliberately blocked the street. She and her own partner actually taunting ICE agents directly before this incident took place. What's also interesting is the officer who was involved in the shooting actually was dragged by another vehicle in a not too distant past. Now, Renee...
So if his officer got dragged before, I'm pretty sure he was not going to be dragged again. If he's been dragged before, I mean, wow, he was able to come back to work, after some time. But again, I'm hearing on the news a lot of incidents with cars now, the ICE agents, with people using their cars as weapons. So I don't know, is that part of the non-cooperation tactics in the manual, that's not publicized? Use your vehicle.
So much for being non-violent.
Right.
Nicole Good actually was married 3 times. This 3rd time was to a woman. Previous 2 times were to men, right? And she actually did not have custody of the older 2 children that she had. She had custody of the youngest child.
Well, I wonder why she didn't have custody of her other 2 children. Was it the lack of critical thinking skills? Was it this non-cooperation training? Like, why did she not have custody of the other? I mean, it kind of makes sense, though, because think about it. She didn't have custody of the other 2 children, and look how she left the 6-year-old that they took to school that day. Mm-hmm. So it kind of, now that this information is coming out, it kind of makes sense why she wouldn't have the custody, because she was entrusted in the custody of the youngest child, a 6-year-old, and we saw the behavior that took on right after they dropped the child off to school. So
and her now partner were the ones who were raising this child.
Well,
whose father
those two brains was not braining well enough to be doing anything productive, because if she and the partner were the only two ones raising that child and both of them are out there engaging in these activities, why didn't one stay home? Why didn't one stay home? I mean, and then they could swap days if they both wanted to participate. Why would they both go out there and engage in this at the same time? It doesn't make any sense to me.
tragically passed away in 2023. Now, she had enrolled this child in a school in that area that was known for actually training parents how to resist ICE's efforts, okay? So she was radicalized for a very long time. What's also very interesting is she and her partner actually fled and went to Canada directly after the 2024 presidential election because they were so terrified of the Trump presidency, but somehow they found their way back to America pretty quick. I wonder
Wow, that was fast, because Trump hasn't been, president that long yet. Coming up on what, a year? Wow. So they moved to Canada and then came back. Why did they come back? Why did they come back if they felt Canada worked better? Why did they come back? Maybe they would have stayed in Canada, this situation wouldn't have never happened.
I think we all know the answer to that question.
No, I want to know the answer. What's the answer?
With this officer with her vehicle and continually refused to obey the instructions that were given to her.
Well, we know that not obeying is part of the manual, they say, that's circulating amongst the parents. So the non-cooperation tactics, do not comply, do not obey. So we understand where that's coming from.
These agents in the first place. She was acting by definition like a domestic terrorist, because a is someone who unlawfully uses violence or intimidation in pursuit of political aims. And what's also really interesting is the deeper you look, the more you realize that she thought that she was just there protesting ICE's heightened presence in the area because of the aftermath of Nick Shirley exposing how much Somalian fraud took place. But information now has come out showing that they were there for a plethora of individuals who were here from a plethora of other countries.
Okay, so ICE was doing enforcement actions for many people from, right, they don't have like a specific, I think that they just go for the illegal immigrants. I don't think they care about which country. It just seems like they're going off of, legal status.
Involved in and charged with some of the most terrible offenses you can imagine, up to and including assault.
Well, we don't need to know what they're charged with, because we've seen enough in the news about Blinken, am I saying her name right? Blinken Riley, the Riley lady, woman, unfortunately, who lost her life, and so many others that lost their lives due to individuals in the country unlawfully. So it doesn't matter like which country they came from. I think all criminals need to be off of the street especially if they're causing people to lose their lives and just doing things like, I don't think you should stop someone from getting someone who's dangerous off the street. I know this is a big thing going on in the news. So some people didn't commit any additional crimes. The only crime was coming in illegally. Well, how many countries can you just pack up back and go live your best life in without ever doing any paperwork or without going through the proper channels? I, for one, would like you to put that in the comments. I know they have asylum and things like that, but some of these situations that I've seen when there are caravans of people that were heading to the U.S., they passed a lot of countries that were, to quote unquote, in a better condition than the country they left, and they skipped all those countries and came to America. And now it's coming out with all the fraud and stuff that's been going on in some of these places. People getting things and resources that they weren't legally entitled to. It's just a whole lot of stuff coming out. I just want to know, are there countries where, people can go to without doing any legal channels, and they can stay there and get driver's license and drive tractor trailer trucks and mow over people on the highway because they don't understand the language, because they didn't assimilate into the country of which they came? We've seen that happening a lot in the news. Are there countries that allow you to just live there without ever doing any legal channels? And there are, put it in the comments, your experience. You went to a country, you didn't have any paperwork, you didn't apply for paperwork, and you made your best life out there, and no one's looking for you. Because I would think that countries do have borders. It's just the way that it is. And if there's legal channels you're supposed to follow, and if the legal channels that others before you have followed, they went through the proper steps to get their paperwork and, pay whatever fees they had to pay, whatever they need to do. Isn't there a way for people to do that? And if they're, unfortunately being detained or sent back because those things weren't done and that's the directive, how can, people prevent the officers from doing that job? It's almost kind of like when you think of fugitives and things like that. If the person is a fugitive from the law or there's a warrant, it really doesn't matter who finds the person and the agencies. Once they do find them, unfortunately, they have to do what they need to do. If the person could be funny, great, entertaining, whatever. If the paperwork says what it says, it is what it is. And so just stopping them from doing their job is not the solution. Maybe the solution is legislative matters, changes in laws, people following the channels that they need to follow when they come into different places and countries. Because I don't know, but maybe you can put it in the comments, what countries are just allowing you to come there and never do any type of paperwork. And maybe they're providing you with housing and health insurance, food benefits, paying your rent for the year. You able to work and drive. Even if you don't speak the language of that country, you can get in a vehicle, not know what a sign means, and just take off in a vehicle. Put it in the comments if you know those places and that's what your experience is and that's what you've done as well. Because, I'm not aware of the immigration tactics in other countries. And that might be a good topic to dive into, just because it just seems like if this is the enforcement action that people that are here unlawfully are being removed, can you go like to Mexico or somewhere like that and just walk in and never check in and eat any legal channels? Let us know, because that would be interesting to see your all perspectives on that. But that was the update about this so-called connection to Renee and this training, non-cooperation training, and this kind of tactics that are going around for the parents in that area. Do you think she really was trained? Do you think she was really, that's why she thought she was maybe doing something right? Because that's the belief that the belief in actions. Let us know, because it just seems like more and more information keeps trickling out about this whole situation. So we'll keep an eye on it. Share your thoughts, what you think, and also your experiences. Have you been able to, like I said, go into another country without any paperwork, get into their schools, get good job, get all the benefits? Let us know. Maybe that's a topic that we need to dive into further. But thank you for listening. You all take care.
Have a good one.